Greetings, Commanders, and welcome to episode 2 of The Captain's Log, a show where we meet some of the people behind the scenes working on Star Trek Fleet Command, as well as answer some of the burning questions that are being asked throughout the community. I am your host, Senior Community Manager Eco, and with me today is Clay. Mind giving us an introduction, who you are, what you do, your role?
Yeah, happy to. My name is Clay Sutter. I'm currently a Senior Product Manager on Star Trek Fleet Command, and I've been on the team for about 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
How long have you been in gaming for?
2 years.
So literally, this is your first job in gaming.
Yeah, this is my first job in gaming.
What made you take sort of the jump over into gaming? And what were you doing before, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I was actually in school, I was in a graduate program for 2 years immediately before joining Scopely and the Star Trek Fleet Command team. And before that, I was working in advertising. Now, the reason I did it was really to fulfill a lifelong dream of working in gaming. Before I went into undergrad and then started my career, I was really interested in gaming. But at that time, there really weren't any programs, college programs that were specifically geared towards gaming, or at least not at the scale that would have really served me well. I remember looking at job postings and seeing that they would say, hey, you want to write a big blockbuster AAA game? It's like, yes, I do. Like, all right, you have to write a AAA game to write a AAA game. It was, a little bit of a paradox that I, as a 16 and 17-year-old, I couldn't work my way around that. So then I just kind of gave it up. But then when I was looking at graduate programs, I saw this is actually something that I could reasonably achieve even, a little bit farther into my career. So that's what I did.
Yeah, it seems like a lot for just like gaming in general. It's one of those things where it's hard to get a degree that's for like a specific role in a gaming company. And it's really just based on experience and getting your foot in the door. And from there, it seems to become a little bit easier. Like the industry is relatively small. But I was the same way as you. Like I was a kid playing Halo in my basement, dreaming about working for a gaming company one day, and look at us now, Mom, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a great feeling.
So, especially for me, coming over here, I learned a lot about all of the different sort of pieces and roles that go into making a game like Star Trek Fleet Command. What does a senior product manager do? And what's like the day-to-day look like for people like me who had no idea and had to learn a bunch of titles?
Yeah. So I would say that on the Star Trek team, we really have two types of product managers. Product managers who are focused on the roadmap. In that case, they're really looking far out and kind of planning all the different types of things that we're going to build and release months and months in advance. And then my role is really focusing on the live operations. And the way that I would describe that at a high level is I am trying to look at all of the ways that our players are engaging with the game, experiencing it, what types of content and features they're adopting, and really how we can better serve those players, while at the same time balancing all of the objectives that we have as a company. So I'm trying to manage the player's experience of Star Trek as a game, while taking into account, of course, all those higher level objectives that we're also trying to achieve.
Yeah.
What that means on a daily basis is a lot of analysis, some of it looking at just player feedback. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? How do they perceive different things? But then also looking at the data. So how is this piece of content being adopted? How many players are acquiring it or using it on a daily basis? And then taking those learnings and trying to advance the game, trying to come up with new events or new ways that we can source the content and the features to players so that they keep coming back and enjoying the experience.
Yeah, and so like objectives you're talking about are like, getting more people into the game, getting people to do more of the events, different types of sort of engagement activities like that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So making sure that we have estimates and projections of how many people might engage with this type of event, how many people will complete this type of event, and then looking at those numbers, seeing if they matched up with our expectations, how we might want to adjust things, and troubleshooting anything else that comes up in the process.
I know that we work a lot together, your team and my team now, but yeah, it definitely took me a long time to sort of understand how things are sort of broken up and divided, and how there is a lot of just rationale behind every decision that is made, right? Like, while we love Star Trek Fleet Command, the video game, and we want everyone to have a great time, there is a lot of just like number wise, like, oh, this event was too obviously too hard because this is the completion rate of it. We need to adjust it based on this. And it's very, very analytical, the type of work that your team does, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There are certain events where we know they are going to be more challenging, and we design them that way. There was intent behind that. But there might still be scenarios where we want to adjust that, make it a little bit easier, or change how we're scoring different things so that players have multiple paths to completing a given event. There are so many different ways that we can incorporate the various learnings that we get from different sources back into the game and ultimately make it better for our players.
Yeah. So, talking about some of the things that we've done over the past few months, Deep Space Nine is coming to a close. Or by the time this video comes out, has already ended. What was working on the DS9 arc like? And did you have a favorite part of the DS9 arc, or something that you really enjoyed being a part of throughout these past 4 months?
Yeah, so in terms of first the overall experience, I think there was a lot of internal pressure to really be successful with the Deep Space Nine arc. Because speaking for myself, and I know lots of other people on the team, this was our favorite Star Trek series. This is my favorite Star Trek series. So I personally really wanted to make it great and make sure that people enjoyed it, and that we were trying out lots of new things. Like, those were all things that I hoped to achieve. And I think the team as a whole really pushed to do new things with it. So if you look at the Bajoran faction, for instance, and the incorporation of the solo armadas, and making them such that players are intended to play with the solo armadas every single day. That's part of their normal daily activity. That's something we haven't really done with armadas. So by making them more approachable, it opened up a lot of things that we could do with the progression of the faction, and ultimately distinguish it from all the other factions that have come before. I think that kind of thing is really cool for me personally. And the other challenge, speaking to the overall experience, is making sure that it was still cohesive, that we were telling a cohesive story, and that we were building on all the different things that we were releasing, whether it was the espionage event series or the Alliance Starbases as well. Now, I think your other question was about what were some of my favorite things working on specifically?
That you got to work on, or that you were a part, because I know a lot of people gave feedback to me. You know, I'm talking with the community daily, and I have content creators reaching out to me so that we can work together on different types of things. And one of the things that I heard just pretty regularly was just how amazing the Bajoran faction was. Like, how cool it was one of the best things that has come out this past year for some people. And I think that it was really awesome that we were able to take the opportunity to do something new like that with Deep Space Nine. So just curious if you had something, as, you know, a player, as somebody that works on the game, that you really enjoyed as well.
Yeah, so I coincidentally did work pretty closely on the Bajoran faction and the Solo Armadas. So that's something that is very near and dear to me. And I think it came out great. It seems like people are really enjoyed it from the beginning, engaging with the solo armadas, trying out new different teams and crews. I think that's awesome. I love to see that kind of activity in the game.
Yeah.
Other things that I thought were quite interesting, whether I personally worked on them or at least touched them, I thought there are some very interesting ideas with the espionage event series. I think a multi-month event is something we haven't really done before, so that was super cool how that came together. We also did some new things with the ways that we sourced our officers to try to change those up a little bit with Goldakat and Wei Yun. And so I think that was another interesting approach that we kind of brought into the game, because those characters, those officers, how they perform in the game are widely beloved. And we wanted to make sure that they got the attention and the kind of prestige, if you will, that we were able to do with the new sourcing approaches that we took there.
So speaking of new things that we tried doing, and speaking about officers specifically, we saw that for a couple of months we went away from the standard sort of SLB focus, and we went towards this new recruit focus, and then for update 49 in December, we went back to the SLB. Now, just curious the insight into trying these different things. What was the thought process? What did we learn from these new methods?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first started considering this new sourcing approach, first for Goldakat and then later for Wei Yun, we were really looking at the performance and the engagement with those SLB events that we had the last couple months. And what we found is that attention and overall engagement and participation was waning, so that they didn't have the strength with players that they once had. So that gave us a really good opportunity to try something new, try something different. And what the approach of offering the kind of recruit packs that we had available in the game is that all of a sudden players could go as far as they wanted to with the officer. They didn't have to wait for 1 weekend, 2 weekend, 3 weekend, maybe a couple months down the line, we'll try something different. If they wanted to fully max out their officer, they could do that. So we were tackling two different challenges: that challenge of the waning interest, but also the challenge of people not being able to go as far and really maximize those officers if they should so choose to do it. And so I think that with that in mind, we were quite successful with this new approach. However, I'm also aware that this is not something that we should do all the time. I very much like variety. And so when we went back to the leaderboard format for the December Deep Space Nine Part 4, that was always intended for us to go back to that. And certainly in the future, we will return to the recruit sourcing that we did in DS9 Parts 2 and 3, but it's not something that we're going to be doing all the time.
Yeah, and it's something that we evolved upon as well, from what I saw. I mean, before, when we were doing Gold Ducat, it was very much kind of just the recruit sort of focus, right? And we had a way for people to change in ultra recruits for the new recruit token so that they could access that in a free-to-play manner. And then we went the following month where we had just heroic SMSs, where people could, because everyone likes to double dip, right? You know, you and I both know this is a fact.
Oh, absolutely.
We're not investing materials unless we're getting something back for them. And that's what was something that was great about the SLBs, was that people would be able to invest their materials, upgrade ships, their station, whatever it may be, while also getting access to the newest officers. And with the heroic SMSs that we did for Wei Yun, we kind of got that balance, right? Because people were able to access the recruit while also investing materials to getting shards. So it's very obvious that the team, just in general, is very open to trying and experimenting new things. And we're aware that we might not always get it perfect the first time, and that's where change, reiteration, and feedback comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to do the best job that we can at all times, but absolutely there are going to be times where we make an assumption that might be proven to be incorrect, or we will not balance it quite right. That happens. But where my role really comes in is then, sure, we made those decisions. Let's look at them and see how we can improve going forward. I think it would be a huge mistake for us to not experiment and continually try new things, because ultimately, at least to me, it feels like that the kind of idiosyncrasies that you get from us experimenting and trying all these different things make Star Trek unlike any other game that at least I personally play, where you find many of the events are super locked in, where it's, this month you have this type of event, this month you have this other type of event. But we're trying new things all the time, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that something that is really good, because we work together, right? He's here because I asked him as a favor, and he's more than happy to be here. But there have been times, especially when I first started, I was like, Clay, this is the response. What about if we do this instead? And you are we need data to look at this. It's been a day. Let's give it some time to see how this evolves, because those first impressions aren't always 100% true to being accurate after something evolves over time. And I think that it's really valuable having someone like you on the team to sort of help me calm down a little bit, but also at the same time, you're more than welcome. You're always open to hearing the initial feedback, and if we do need to make a fast pivot like we have done in the past. So
yeah, and I think there are many times where the types of data I'm looking at is feedback, the verbal feedback that we're getting from our players and our community. That's incredibly important too. So it's both that qualitative and the quantitative data we're trying to kind of gather together and apply simultaneously. One thing that I've found is often it's really easy to get, whether you're a player or even me working on the game, there are certain things where you'll just kind of dial in on that, okay, this is the one issue, this has to be it. But then when you step back, you give it a little bit of time, you can find, in fact, that really wasn't an issue and this thing worked. Or maybe you saw that, hey, I thought when it first came out this was great, but when I actually looked at it after the fact, it didn't really quite measure up. There are just so many different things that you can find after giving it a little bit of time and trying to gather as much information as you can, and then applying it, saying, all right, how can we push this forward in the future? Yeah. And that's also why oftentimes, even though our team moves very quickly and we're doing a lot of different things and events and packs and all of these things at any given time, we still don't move quite as fast as some people sometimes just because we are trying to gather all of that information and all of those insights in order to ideally make the best decisions and not have to continue remaking them. Because sometimes if we go with a kind of quick push out, we might not really achieve what we could if we had just given it another couple days.
So speaking about different stuff that we tried, espionage event.
Yeah.
I think that this was something that was really cool that we've never done before, especially over a long period of time. Feedback was about information, about making it more clear on how this event was going to transpire over 4 months, which that is not a thing that's solely on any team, right? I should have been writing a blog post and articles about that. And I think it's great learnings for the next time that we do something like this. I guess that's getting ahead of myself. Are we going to do something like this again in the future?
Yeah, I think that's a totally fair question. And so speaking first to your question, I think we'll absolutely try something similar again in the future. And what I mean by similar is another multi-month event series that's helps build the narrative of a given arc.
Sure.
I think that absolutely is something that we'll try to bring back. Whether it's in the exact form of the espionage event, only time will tell. But I think that type of storytelling, that type of engagement is something really cool that we should absolutely return to. And then addressing the kind of the unspoken part of that around how do we improve that, I think we learned so much from the espionage event.
Oh yeah.
Going in, we actually had a overall shorter event series plan than we ended up doing. So things changed during the development of that. So as a result, when you spoke to, yes, we can improve our communication here, we can improve that there. Those are absolutely the types of things that we're bringing in and figuring out how we can make this even better in the future.
Yeah, it's one of those things where anytime we try something new, it's again, it's we do the best that we possibly can based on all the information that we have of what we think is going to succeed. But the first time anyone does something new, high chances are it's not going to be perfect the first time around, right?
Right. And you've probably seen that with lots of event series we've done over the years. From when we first did a multi-part event, I think it was with TOS Part 1, if I remember correctly. It was the first time that we tried anything where it was like a trivia kind of treasure hunt type thing. And we continued to iterate on that. Some more successful than others, but it's something that's become part of standard rotation every couple months. And now the espionage, maybe there's something that we can do with that we can keep refreshing it and bringing it back in different forms. Maybe it's an entire month series, maybe it's a multi-month series. Who's to know at this point?
And also the team's always coming up with new ways, and like they're called metrics, like new sort of objectives for events, right? Whether it be like destroy X type of hostile in Y location, and then becoming more and more specific or having new things. So I feel like the events are only going to continue to grow and evolve over time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. What we've seen, even across my time working on Star Trek, very early on, we were, let me rephrase, we weren't too precise with a lot of those actions that we were requiring people to do. It's like defeat this enemy, defeat that enemy, defeat this player in this ship, etc. And we had some other things baked into it. But in the last 2 years, we've greatly increased the variety and the specificity of the different actions that we're having in different events. And that's opened up a lot of doors for us in terms of varying the day-to-day player experience. And I certainly think that we'll take even greater advantage of that going forward.
Yeah. So when's Voyager coming in 2023?
No comment.
We asked David Eccleberry the same question. He just like this. Only thing he said was soon. So thank you.
The catchphrase.
Yeah, it's the soon TM catchphrase that all of us use so often. Thank you so much for being here, Clay. I have one last question. This is sort of one of those things that goes around the community relatively often. It is, does pineapple belong on pizza?
Hard no for me.
Thank you. It's a hard no from me too. And there are probably going to be a bunch of people with torches and pitchforks in the Discord moving forward. But that is to be another day.
So it goes.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody who tuned into the second episode of the Captain's Log. Live long and prosper.